So we've got a big update when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 and a game that everyone is excited about to potentially come over. One of the holdovers from the Nintendo Switch 1 that desperately needs an update, and that is Astral Chain. We've got to talk about what the developers behind the game are saying about this. I've been following up on Astral Chain quite a bit, and I do think that there is a possibility that Nintendo and some of the creators that were behind the game bring something back for it. So we're going to talk about that. We've got a huge update with the Nintendo Switch 2 sales and kind of what's going on there. A lot of quiet people that were trying to make statements about the Switch 2 sales all of a sudden don't have much to say about that. So let's discuss exactly what those sales are going to mean for you as a gamer and what developers are going to do, plus some more big Nintendo Switch 2 updates, some surprising stuff to go over. So it should be a lot of fun. But before we continue, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 at 140,000 subscribers or on September 1st, whichever comes first. Subscribe, like, comment. The winner will be chosen at random, and it's a worldwide giveaway. Thanks, peeps. Astral Chain. Let's talk about this. This is one of the best games that I have ever played. Easily one of the best Nintendo Switch 1 games released on the platform all the way back in 2019. This game was announced and released in a blitz, a flurry. I think it was a February 2019 announcement, and then it launched, I think, summer or so of that same year, 2019, and it is phenomenal. I actually like it just as much as Bayonetta 2, and in some ways a lot more than the Bayonetta series. There's a lot of dope things about this game. Astral Chain is a phenomenal title, reviewed very high back when it came out in 2019, and people have been hoping and anticipating maybe getting something from this franchise, even if it was a Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game, but just the original Nintendo Switch 1 game. Even it was something, because it necessarily didn't sell like gangbusters. It sold over 1 million units. It sold decently considering the type of game that it is. But let's talk a little bit more about what some of the original developers had to say about this, including Mr. Tura, which a lot of you guys would remember from Nintendo's E3 presentation when they were showing off the game. So shout outs to Genki. He covered this on Twitter and says that Astral Chain was briefly mentioned in the Famitsu interview with the Nier Automata creators. Yoko Taro suggests Takehisa Tura would like to make a sequel, but Tura avoided the topic. I personally hope we do get an Astral Chain sequel one day. So let's go over the actual dialogue here. Yoko Taro says, Tura-san, is there still something outside of the games you'd like to do with Nier? Tura says, I only made the game, so I haven't done anything else besides that. Yoko Taro says, it seems like you want to make a sequel to Astral Chain. Yusuke Saito says, since the game released by Nintendo, that's something we can't make happen here. Tura says, regarding Nier Automata, I'd be perfectly happy if I could continue to watch interviews, events, and broadcasts like these from the best seats available. So it's something that he would absolutely want to do, but Nintendo is the IP owner. It was when he was with Platinum Games. He's no longer with Platinum Games anymore, so he's simply talking from the outside looking in. He has no actual say if they're going to do it. Nintendo has to want to do it. They're going to have to put the team together. They're going to have to pay everybody. They're going to have to get the marketing together. They're going to have to do so much different stuff when it comes down to it. But I do think at the bare minimum, an Astral Chain Nintendo Switch 2 edition is something that we should get. I think that it sold well enough and it did good enough on the Nintendo Switch 1 that there should be a Switch 2 version of the game, because the only issue with that game for me, one of the biggest issues with the game, is that it's in 30 FPS. If the game was on the Switch 2 and they updated it, it can run at 60 FPS. The resolution could be much better in handheld mode, although it looks pretty good. And of course, docked mode, they can get that going like at 1440p or 1080p. That would be phenomenal. That would immediately boost that game up to be one of the best games even on Nintendo Switch 2. Like, it is a phenomenal title. So I do think that that is probably in line at some point. Unfortunately, there was no uncapped frame rate mode, which is usually what Bayonetta games run at. They usually have uncapped frame rates on Nintendo platforms, so they'll be going all over the place at times, but for some reason they decided to just lock it down at 30 and not have a mode for uncapped. So if it was uncapped, that would have been nice, because then you can play it at 60 FPS on the Nintendo Switch 2. And yes, it does look cleaner when it comes to playing the game in boost mode on the Nintendo Switch 2, but that frame rate is still hard locked at 30. There are some parts later in the game, depending on where you are, where the frame rate does dip below that. It does smooth that out completely on the Switch 2, but we need that doubling. We need that 60 FPS. I've said this once, and I'll say it again. Yes, you have all the fancy new graphics that are coming out that are phenomenal in Nanite and Lumite or whatever they're doing with the Unreal Engine, but a lot of Switch 1 games look just fine. They look and play better than so many games in today's day. So if you can get me those games running at better frame rates and clean resolution, I'm good. Right now, I'm playing a game that runs at 1440p, 60 FPS, but looks like a PS3 game. It's called Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven, and the game's phenomenal. There's some things that I don't like, but combat-wise, it's better than so many modern games, and it's an old-school turn-based RPG. It's a remake of an old Super Nintendo RPG. So, to me at least, I just want incredible experiences in games that look clean and play good enough. That's what I need, and Astral Chain is definitely that, and then some. So, bring over Astral Chain, Nintendo. Get this done. I don't know if there's ever going to be a sequel. We have to wait and see with that. But I guess if there's enough interest, if there's a Switch 2 version, sales get boosted, maybe Nintendo would consider it. But they did do multiple sequels for Bayonetta. We got Bayonetta 2, we got Bayonetta 3, we got Bayonetta Origins. So, I mean, they did all sorts of stuff with that franchise, and that's never been the massive seller. So, I think Astral Chain could be something that they think about as well. So, we'll see as we get into the year 2 and year 3 and so for the Nintendo Switch 2. But when it comes to Astral Chain, one thing that can really help it out is getting the Nintendo Switch 2 to sell more systems, because the more the system sells, the better the prospects are for games like Astral Chain. And that's what I want to get into next, because Pierre has talked about this, and the Circana sales numbers for here in the US have been revealed. Now, if you want the full breakdown, Matt Piscatella has that, and that's cool. Tomodachi Life was the top game sold here in the US, and now that they're using projections of digital sales, Nintendo doesn't give them the actual digital sales. So I'm not really sure about this projection stuff or estimating stuff, but either way, the fact that Tomodachi Life did so good and that the Nintendo Switch 2 was the top system sold, and it wasn't just the top system sold, it was pretty good in comparison to the Nintendo Switch 1. Shout outs to Pierre 485. He had the beat on this one, and he says that the Nintendo Switch 2 sold approximately 270,000 units plus in April for 2026 in the US, Circana has stated. Now that's up 60% when compared to the Nintendo Switch 1 performance in April of 2018. So that's going on the following year, that April, and pretty much nothing released from what I can remember in April of 2018 on the Switch 1. So I can see why there was definitely a boost when it comes to the sales here. Now that's leading by 11% over the Nintendo Switch 1 after 11 months, and probably not looking back for another year. So Switch 2 will probably stay above or right around it. Then maybe that's where, like, in year 3 or so, the Switch 1 started going crazy because of COVID and stuff like that. But we'll see what the Nintendo Switch 2 has. But this brings us to an even more important thing. This year is so crucial, and I know that Nintendo wants to make sure that they maximize everything, but as you're seeing, they've essentially been the best-selling system for the full year here at this point. And with the price increases that have happened to all the systems, Nintendo is not out of that. They have a price increase that's coming September 1st. So I do think that people are thinking, okay, September 1st, price increase is coming. We heard about that recently, but there's enough exclusives and there's enough big games to pick up the system and for it to be worth it. That's why people are still buying it, even in this economy where systems just aren't selling that great. The PlayStation 5 has absolutely everything. It has everything. Every single third-party game that you can think of. It has great performance. It has all this different type of stuff. And they only sold 1.5 million units for the first 3 months. And that was right before the last month with March, knowing that it was going to get a price increase. And they still only sold 1.5 million units. Yes, it's winding down in the time period. And yes, they haven't had a price decrease when it comes to the system since 2020. And that's probably contributing to it not selling as well as it could. And even Grand Theft Auto's not out. Once that comes out, that's obviously going to sell a lot better. But at the same time, it's not like it's doing crazy types of numbers like the Nintendo Switch 1 or doing as fast as what we saw with the Nintendo Switch 2 because of the chip shortage. So it's one of those things with the Switch 2 is that it's still very impressive that it's able to put up these type of numbers without all of those big third-party support and not having all the different power and certain things. It's really about the content in there. And that's why I think this year it's so crucial for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, or for the holiday season. What is Nintendo going to have? We have the rumored upcoming June Nintendo Direct. A lot of the summer events are happening. We've got a release date, or we've got an announcement for the new State of Play that's going to be coming. We've got Summer Games Fest. We already have the Xbox show. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. So that's why it's going to be crucial to continue the sales, especially at the heightened price point after September 1st, that Nintendo makes sure that they have some bangers that people really want to go out there and pick up so these sales can continue, because at $500 that does make it a bit more expensive for families and for people out there. So what content do you have to make up for it? Now, Mr. Furukawa has stated that they have content to make up for what's happening here. They are going to have games, and I completely believe them. Star Fox came out of nowhere, and Nintendo has been known to drop bombs when it comes to various different big games that get short windows before when they're announced to when they release. Star Fox was just that, and I think that we're going to get a number of games. Ocarina of Time remake, we're probably going to get some remasters, re-releases, probably going to get like another big game or two. We're going to get some stuff that's going to blow our minds, in my opinion, announced this year. Some of them even dropping this year, some of them dropping next year. In addition to the huge boost of Nintendo's third-party games that they are now getting, that they did not get on the Nintendo Switch 1, I think that they're really going to kind of emphasize the Nintendo partner directs and have those have big third-party games that have maybe 2 Nintendo Directs per year, one in the summer, one in the fall. So I think that's probably going to be their strategy going forward, in addition to having individual game directs like the Star Fox Direct or even the Indie Show. They have that as well, and using the Nintendo Today app. So I think it's going to be a combination to really just get information out at a very continuous flow, so people aren't waiting just for these specific dates when it comes to Nintendo Direct to get news on new Nintendo games. Like we got Splatoon Raiders, Nintendo Today, we've got the Star Fox Direct and all that for Star Fox on the Switch 2. So I'm excited to see exactly how that Nintendo keeps these sales and the momentum going, and what they have to really kind of capitalize on this momentum. But I do think that one of the games that can help out with this, I know it's a long time coming, and this gets us to the next topic, Genshin Impact. Remember, this was supposed to come out on the Nintendo Switch 1 back in like, what, 2020, 2021? They had that trailer a hot minute ago, and it just kind of disappeared from the universe. So it looks like maybe it's going to be back. So the latest version of the popular gacha game, Genshin Impact, has apparently added Nintendo Switch to the in-game account login manager internally, which is presumed to mean that you can link your Nintendo account to the game. Now, the anime-inspired adventure would struggle to run on the original Nintendo Switch 1. I think that there might be some problems with that, just because the Switch 1 does not have the best, I would say, specs for something like Genshin Impact, considering how it runs on a base PS4, which isn't terrible. It's okay, but definitely not something that you would think a Switch won't be able to handle at the nice 60 frames per second and all of that. So I do think that this is probably for the Nintendo Switch 2, not the Nintendo Switch 1. Now, Hoyoverse did say a few years back that the game would come to the Nintendo Switch 1, though that was probably scrapped in favor for the Nintendo Switch 2 while they get that one ready to go. Now, there's been no official announcement yet from them, so we got to hold off on saying, okay, it's 100% coming, but it definitely seems like it is coming at this point. And I will let you guys in on a couple different things here that I've noticed. I've noticed even on my own TV, they're showing ads for Orbitals on the Nintendo Switch 2, and they're saying that game's coming. So that's another third-party game. We've gotten all sorts of ratings that have been leaked or that have came out with third-party games. So with all of those ratings, with Orbitals being mentioned, now with this with Genshin Impact, now with the rumors of a Nintendo Direct in mid-June, it definitely seems like Nintendo is preparing either a big partner showcase or a big Nintendo Direct. It's going to be one of the two. Obviously, people would melt down if it was a partner showcase. It's still possible. Jeff Grubb is saying that he's heard that there is a Nintendo Direct in mid-June, but he doesn't know what type it is, but he's assuming that it's going to be a regular Direct. Nate the Hate has stated that he will talk about this in an upcoming podcast soon, the Nate the Hate podcast, so we'll see what happens. But either way, Genshin Impact seems to be on the way to the Nintendo Switch 2. I'd probably guess Nintendo Switch 2, but who knows? Maybe they pull a Bandai Namco and release it on the Switch 1 and Switch 2 like Dragon Ball Sparking and like they did with Digimon. Nobody expected Digimon Story Time Stranger to come to the Nintendo Switch 1, but here we go, it's there. So maybe they do that, but I'm guessing this is going to be a Nintendo Switch 2 release at an upcoming Nintendo Direct, and it launches maybe sometime this year. So what do you guys think about everything? We talked about a lot of different topics. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos as soon as they drop. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.